For the last 25 years, I have been supporting people to work for social change across boundaries. Boundaries like race, age, class, sexual identity, gender. And no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm leading a workshop or running a meeting or helping to host a large conference, I work to keep this one vow that I made 25 years ago, which is basically just to engage that group in a period of quiet together, some mindfulness meditation or gentle yoga. I believe we have barely tapped the potential of these practices to really transform our politics and our future, and today I want to show you how. Early in the Black Lives Matter movement, I was living in Houston, and like a lot of other cities, people there were holding town meetings, organizing protests, advocating for body cams, all really vital actions. There wasn't, however, a lot of opportunity for people to come together and really connect across racial lines. I was working at a place called the Rothko Chapel, which is a very unique, singular space for art, spiritual practice, and human rights. And we decided to host a community forum called Black Lives Matter, Getting Beyond the Hashtag. We wanted folks, of course, to hear from experts of color, so we invited a historian, an elder, young organizer, incredible voices of wisdom. And we also wanted people to have an opportunity to actually feel their feelings in the midst of a turbulent time and really hear each other. So I also led this very short guided meditation, just inviting people into their heart, into their breath. And I explicitly welcomed these specific emotions I knew we were feeling, things like fear, rage, grief, compassion, confusion, motivation. And then people split up into small groups to talk across race and age lines. And pretty soon the space filled with that buzz of folks laughing and crying. And when we came back together, we opened up the space for people to share. Black parents talked about their communal concern for Black youth. A white woman discussed her struggles with a really racist and reactionary relative. And a journalist talked about the challenges of covering all of these complexities in today's media. And everybody was witnessed with great compassion and great attention. I tell you this story because if we are really interested in true social transformation, it's likely we are spending a lot of time in groups. Our progress depends on how well we can hang together and get things done, whether that's shifting policy, building alternative institutions, or stopping a war. And these groups mean that we are, by definition in today's society, crossing a lot of boundaries. In fact, we're being asked to cross more boundaries more often and with a lot greater skill. This is really exciting because there's a lot of creative energy at the boundary. Think about those places where the sea meets the shore, where an open field transitions to forest, or that edge of society where revolutionary ideas come from. Differences meet at a boundary, and there's great possibilities that abound. But these boundaries are also a real test of our humanity. These lines of difference can really, really easily become fault lines. Our good behavior one-on-one, it doesn't translate up so easily. The larger and more diverse groups get, the more competitive and less friendly we tend to be. We can certainly see this today in our political climate or around hot button issues. We know what it looks like. And even when we do agree, we stumble. We fail to build on each other's good ideas. And we're not so great at creating trust that would really allow for the kind of work we need over the long haul. So just take that in a minute. What does that mean, not to be able to build these relationships of trust? I think part of it is that we are raised to fear or reject what we don't understand. This manifests often as what we could call implicit bias. We all have that. Those are assessments that lie deep in the subconscious. They tend to start early on, just by nature of the society we live in, and they continue to motivate our behavior. I have this, you have this. We've seen the devastating effects of implicit bias when it comes to race and racism, and we need to get braver about acknowledging how it unfolds in our daily lives. As a white woman working mostly in multiracial settings, I've had so much opportunity to examine my own failings and interrogate my own biases. There's a lot of times where it would be much easier for me to just freeze up in my confusion or let my anxiety about making a mistake push me to a safer sideline. But I have been really lucky to have places that allow for vulnerability around this, and I've tried to create those kinds of spaces for other people. I've seen what happens when the rough edges of racism are met with a gentle fierceness. And I know the difference now between unhealthy shame and healthy regret. Think about that. What is the difference between unhealthy shame and healthy regret? I also know what's possible when we meet at the boundary with courage, and that's where practice comes in. There's been so much amazing research that we know so much about the benefits of these practices like meditation and yoga. Increased attention span, greater ability to regulate emotions and cope with stress, less depression, students acting out less. There's even been one study, and we need a lot more, that has shown that meditation can reduce implicit bias around race and age. And this makes sense intuitively. Think about how a little bit of mindfulness can really begin to shift and slow down that mental stream of activity that seems so constant. How it interrupts the conditioning, and how it can enable us to step back into what the yogis call witness consciousness, which is a kind of meta-awareness that allows for non-attachment and a lot more wisdom and compassion to come through. I want to invite you just to take a look around the room and imagine right now, I won't do it, but imagine I asked you to get into small groups with 3 or 4 people that you don't know. And then imagine I asked you to share a little bit about your own biases or your experiences with racism. Notice what arises for you. Maybe curiosity, maybe a little bit of discomfort. I know I could start to feel that in my belly. You might feel it in your chest or in your jaw. And of course, we don't want to live in this place of tension, so let's take a nice inhale and exhale. A little breathing room is what allows us to come back to wiser thinking and our best selves. Taking another breath in and another breath out. And one more. Nice full breath in and exhale. When I get a little breathing room, I can observe my own thoughts and other people with less judgment, and I'm way more open. That's the witness. And it has so much power to short circuit these prejudices, these biases, even the effects of internalized oppression. For this reason, I feel like we need to be super planful and intentional about how we include practice in every kind of political and activist group experience that we're a part of. I plan for it now intentionally so that I can keep that vow I made 25 years ago. It's just like planning what food to serve. Or it can be an intervention. Sometimes if I notice someone in a meeting starting to round forward, I know something's going on that maybe isn't the most productive contribution, so I just invite them to inhale open their chest, and drop their shoulders. You can try that right now. And I've also called for practice when it's so clear that talking has run its course and people need to drop down from their head into their heart or their gut. Many years ago, I was working with a high school program for students. It was a faith-based program. The topic of race came up, and a lot of things started happening at once. White students were sort of acting out of traditional stereotypes, and students of color were very frustrated and understandably angry. So we met as a staff to try to figure out what to do, and we had a rich conversation, but it didn't lead to a lot of clarity. So I just suggested that we take 10 minutes together to be quiet. After 10 minutes were up and I came out of my own meditation practice, I looked around the room and I saw my colleagues. My friend Jason, a white rabbi, was standing at the window praying. My friend Liz, who's Catholic and Latina, was on her knees with her hands clasped in prayer. And Christian and African American Baptist had taken his Bible out. We regrouped and wisdom just flew around the circle. We quickly came up with a plan to introduce a framework of oppression, center the voices of students of color, and give everyone a chance to speak. So what I'm saying is this: I didn't learn the skills to cross boundaries when I was growing up. You probably didn't either. But we can learn them now, and we have to. Our collective survival and our shared humanity, it depends on me and you breaking through the fears we have and literally repatterning our behavior so that these lines of difference don't become fault lines. I believe that this nation is in its early adolescence when it comes to engaging the realities and the consequences of racism. And I believe we all want to grow up. And the good news is that these practices that 30 million of us are using every day can help. These are the ways that we start to shift. But we have to be willing. We have to be willing to scale up mindfulness so that we can meet at the boundary and build relationships of solidarity. And that means we have to be willing to be brave, to struggle, even squirm. It's like going further in a yoga pose. If we're mindful of a stretch, it is a really fruitful place of growth and expansion. If we're mindless, we can get hurt. If we relax into the breath and the body, the mind softens and what is difficult becomes generative. This is just like cells building a body. It starts with our daily interactions, the groups you find yourselves in, difficult family conversations, meetings at work or at school, the activism you're a part of, lunch right now. I believe that we all want what those folks in Houston wanted, what those students wanted, what every group I've ever worked with has wanted, to be seen and heard for who we really are, to connect authentically across lines of difference, and to move together toward justice. Thank you.